Hi, this is another interview with Cole Palmer. Nice
Hello.
to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Just a few questions for you.
Yeah, please do.
First of all, what's the best thing about the National Drum Fair?
The National Drum Fair. Well, first of all, it's one of the very few events in the UK that really means a lot towards the drumming community in general. I think it means an awful lot from the point of view it gives people a chance to meet other dealers, other collectors, find that piece you've been looking for years.
Yeah.
And of course, over the years, as you know, it's grown each year. It started off with really a couple of stalls, and now, if you look at it, it's a complete sort of environment, from like the latest to the oldest to the newest, and of course the best. So, as far as I'm concerned, I think this is a great way for young people to learn. It's a great way for young people to understand what happened and where it came from, this equipment, and obviously to meet and mix with a lot of people who have a lot of savvy about these manufacturers from the past who no longer exist, and the people who are making the top end today.
Yeah, fantastic. Obviously, you've got a lot of gear. Have you got any vintage and custom gear? And what's your favourite?
I haven't got a favourite because I've got too many of them. That's actually bizarre. My favourite, very hard to say really. I would say one of my favourites would be, I've got the new stainless steel Ludwig drum set, a brand new one, which they made for me, which celebrates the 100th anniversary of the Ludwig Drum Company. Ludwig were my first endorsers when I first started, way back in '71. Anyway, I've been with them, I left them, went back about 7-8 years ago, and they knew I was very keen on stainless steel drums, so they started making them. So they made a set for me, which kind of fell in line with the 100th anniversary of the company. So that's what I'm using at the moment, and that's obviously one of my favourite sets. I've got one here in Europe, and I've got one in America. As far as the high-end collectible sets, I've got, I don't have a lot of drums, but what I have are really very choice. I have a double bass drum, Brady drum set, which is one of the few that were ever made. It was made specifically for me. All of the gold fittings and the lugs and whatever, the hoops were all put on by Morris Lang in New York City. Obviously the shells were made in Australia. It's Marginetta eucalyptus, which you know is about £1,900 per square inch. It's one of the, it's a very rare wood actually. And it only ever gets used for furniture or musical instruments, and you have to have a certificate to cut it down to actually get a hold of this particular wood. So it's on the endangered species. So that's quite a gem, because it's a double bass drum set, 4 tom-toms. And then I would say, if you're looking at just pure sort of like money terms and history, probably, I think there's 4 of them in the world. I have one of them. I have what they call a Billy Gladstone drum set. Billy Gladstone, as you know, did a lot of development for Gretsch drums, but he actually made snare drums. He made about 200 snare drums. And the number of kits that he made is never really, I've never quite understood how many. I know there's 4 left in the world, which is documented in the Billy Gladstone catalogue, and obviously my set's in there. And the snare drum that's with the set that I've got was actually made for the drummer Cozy Cole.
Oh, right.
Cozy Cole had a #1 single in America with a track called Tipsy Turvy, which was one of the first, after Let There Be Drums by Sandy Nelson. This came along, or it might have been before. So he's been well up there for many years as one of the few drummers that have a #1 instrumental single. This snare drum has got a plaque on it, and obviously it matches the rest of the drum set. So the drum was not made for the set originally. We put it together in 1987. The tom-toms and the bass drum actually belonged to Laurie Feld. Laurie Feld was a drummer that played with Benny Goodman for many years. The actual tom-toms and the bass drum belonged to Benny Goodman. And he used to carry these and give them to his pickup drummers. Said, I want you to play this set. So it was in that camp for a long time, in Benny's camp, and then eventually it came out, went into a private collection, and from the private collection, the Cozy Cole snare drum got put to it. So that's probably the most valuable and the most historic. And you know, I could go on for ages. I've got lots of other things. I've got a set which was signed by Remo, which was wrapped in the original Emerson, Lake and Palmer logo that we had, and that's obviously very rare as well, because it's got the wrong dates on it, which makes it kind of unique. It says 69, it should say 70, and I use that for the last 9 years of Emerson, Lake and Palmer. And if you go to YouTube and put in Jim Davison, the Generation game, which was a very old game show way back, I actually appeared on his show playing this particular drum set. And so if somebody wants to look in and see that set, it's available on YouTube. That one.
Fantastic. What's the best thing you've seen here at the drum fair?
You know, I haven't had time really to walk around. I did walk past a Cadillac green gold round badge Gretsch Repro drum set. When I say it's a reissue.
Yeah.
I walked past that. I mean, I've seen one of those original ones that came from Birdland originally. I think there was 5 sets made up. I did see one of those in New York. Then obviously Gretsch started making them again. I think in the last 3 years they've been available. But that's all I've seen because I really haven't had a look in.
Brilliant. What do you think the National Drum Fair brings to its audience?
But I think well, as I said earlier, it brings a lot of knowledge. It brings together a lot of talented people who are there on hand for young people if they want to take the initiative to walk up to them and ask them questions, you know, which I'm quite happy for people to do today whilst I'm walking around. It's a very good open day. These type of things, you know, are obviously very big in America. In England, we don't have anything of this quality. That happens every year and has been happening every year for a long time now. So it's a very important day on the drum calendar.
Yeah. Fantastic. Is there any suggestions that there's maybe sort of a few things you want to see at this fair, maybe for next year or sort of a few years on?
I think, you know, the introduction of any form of live music will always be important.
Yeah.
I think obviously, you know, somebody playing a drum set and giving a short demonstration, that's always great too. I think at the end of the day, the Young Drummer of the Year, that deal is great because that encourages the up and coming, and we want to do that. It's really hard to say, you know, what people want because it seems quite complete. There just isn't enough time in the 2 days to do it all to its fullest. Yeah. I mean, one would like different music on both days. You know what I mean? And maybe there's a drum panel of really well-known drummers actually choosing the Drummer of the Year or doing whatever the case, the Young Drum. Maybe there's something like that could happen. Who knows? I would imagine that from this event, which has been going for a long time, probably the one thing which should have been put together, because of the event in general, there probably should have been a magazine or something which should have been issued directly after the event, with all the various interviews, all the various pictures, what was seen, who was there, who did this, who did that. And I think something like that, which starts off on a level where you just get the one a year, would eventually turn into something where you'd have people writing, putting in various lessons, you know, technique tips and this and that, which should be in there anyway. But I think a great magazine or something put together just to round it up, to start to get it to the next level, would be a great idea. When I walk around the room, there's a lot of posters of really old drummers playing Gretsch drums, Philly Jojo, Doc Blakey. Those would be great to have available for kids, you know, to be able to pick up one of those. Because if you want something like that to put on your bedroom wall, you can't if you're a young boy. Where are you going to go? Before I could buy Downbeat magazine on the last page, you could tear it off. There was always a great drummer. Elvin Jones, there he was behind his Gretsch drum set. And I think that kind of history from the photographic point of view is very good. And obviously a drum calendar, I think you should have your own drum calendar as well. That seems something that has happened in Europe quite a lot. I just did a drum festival in Gayor, G-A-Y-O-R. It's in Hungary this year. And it was a big one. It's in February. It's over the weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and I noticed that various vintage dealers had actually got calendars there, and I thought that was a real good thing. And I would imagine that with all the photographs that you've got here from the years you've been going, that to put a calendar together would be a great idea.
Well, that's some fantastic suggestions. Well, I'll have a chat with Gary about that. Right, if you had to relive one gig or one event, which one would it be?
The one I'm going to do today. It's very hard to say, you know, because, you know, there are good gigs and bad gigs, there are exceptional gigs. I mean, one gig that always will stick in my mind, it wasn't the biggest, it wasn't the most important, but what it was the most impressive to me, because various things happened that day. I was in New York City, I was playing at Madison Square Gardens, and as I say, I played at much bigger places than that, but it was very prestigious at the time. I think I was 21. And I remember turning up without any drums. And at the back of the stage, there was a pile of brown boxes with Ludwig written all over them. And I remember opening up these boxes. Here I am, 21, playing in Madison Square Gardens, hit album, first sponsorship, and a brand new Ludwig drum set, and I'm staying in a great hotel. What more could a man ask for? So if you say, you know, that will always stay with me.
Yeah.
That was a moment. I played at California Jam where there was 230,000 people. Over 70,000 got in for nothing. Deep Purple, Black Arkansas, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, and a whole host of Allman Brothers, a whole host of other people. That was monumental. I played the Olympic Stadium in Montreal, just Emerson, Lake and Palmer, 78,000 people. At the end of the day, monumental, with an orchestra, recorded. But one thing that will always stick in my mind is that particular beginning, not of a great sponsorship, but a great career, and to play in a great building, which was famous not only for holding some of the world's greatest boxing matches or the greatest musical shows. It's a piece of America, Madison Square Garden.
Fantastic. So what are you playing on at the moment, gear-wise?
I'm playing on exactly what I told you before.
Yeah.
I'm playing on the stainless steel, 100th anniversary, a Ludwig drum set, two bass drums, 18 by 22, 13 by 9, 14 by 10, 16 by 16, 18 by 16. In America, I have the same set except the bass drums are 24 by 16.
Right.
And the reason for that is that if you want to order this set, they only want to make 24-inch bass drums. So I play in America. The set I have in England was made specially for me here, and I didn't want it to be seen in America, which is fine.
Yeah.
It goes all over Europe with me and whatever. And then in Italy, I play another. I've got a drum set in Tokyo. I've got one in Rome. I've got one here in the UK, and I've got one in America. The two stainless steels, UK and the US. And then in Rome, I've got the same sizes, but in a Blue Vistalite series. And in Tokyo, I've got the same in the Blue Vistalite series.
Fantastic. Who is your inspiration?
Oh, lots of people.
You can pin one down if you say.
I could pin one down, and you know I've said it many times, but you know at the same time, I could say Joe Morello, I could say Elvin Jones, I could say Buddy Rich. At the same time, you know, when you go back and you understand the history of all of these players, I can tell you that the drum solo live at Carnegie Hall, Castilian drums by Joe Morello, is just as important to me as the drum solo West Side Story or Elvin Jones playing three-card mollies. So for me, these are just incredibly important pieces. And you could go on, each one of those guys I could say, well, the solo in Take 5, I could say the solo in Jumping at the Woodside with Buddy Rich and the Count Basie Orchestra. So there is too many actually, because there's been too many great players. And today, you know, when you ask that question in 20 years' time to somebody who's done what I've done, they're not even going to be able to say, because there are so many great players to choose from, because now you have so much to learn from. There's so many DVDs available, there's so many great CDs, there's so many great books. You know, if you want to become a clone of someone, you can get a couple of their DVDs, and if you swap, then you're going to be just like it. Now that's great, that's fantastic. It's not the best, because you know we're not getting originality here, but the standard improves that much quicker because of the material, the educational material that's available. So in years to come, it's going to be very difficult for people to say, this person. I can pick out two or three. The person that got me started was Gene Krupa, because I saw the Gene Krupa film, you know, here in Birmingham. And I saw that, and I remember walking out the cinema and saying to my dad, I want to be a drummer. And I walked down that path ever since.
Fantastic. What advice would you give to those who are starting out or want to develop their playing?
Don't bother. Develop their playing. You know, it's really hard. It depends what you're good at and what you're not good at. When you're good at something, that's what you consistently play. Because you want to, because you can play it and you're good at it.
You want to play it well.
But the real problem is that the great players play things they can't play. That's why they get great. When you're good at something, you'll sit there all day and you'll practice your left hand or whatever. But you know, because you're good at it, and it's great. That's the really good instant reward. Wow, I got it. So the real deal is to practice things you can't play, because that's what it's all about. You can do that already. So it's the speed of moving on. A lot of people tend to dwell on what they have already achieved, and really, I try all the time, even now at 61, I try to pick up things and play things, and I take chances. To this day, when I play the snare drum today, I will be taking chances on things that I've tried, and they're not proved and tested, but because there's everyone there, I've got to do it,
Yeah.
because that's what I'm here for.
Mm.
That's my challenge. I'm not doing it for them, strictly for me, because I'm selfish. This is for me, and that constant challenge only pushes me forward. And my philosophy is that I'm still improving at the moment, so I've got to keep pushing it,
Yeah.
you know. And when I'm not improving, but I can maintain my standard, I'll still be happy. If I can't maintain my standard, then I'll stop.
Yeah, fantastic. Right, any clean, funny stories you wish to share? Clean.
You know, there's been lots of stories over the years. One of the funniest stories, which is not a recent story, in actual fact it did appear in The Guardian, in the film and sort of entertainment section. They called me up and said, could you remember anything that happened to you which was really hilarious and strange and funny? And I could. The one that comes to mind, which has happened in America, and I was with Emerson, Lake and Palmer. We played the set, and we were at the front of the stage getting ready to play an encore. Anyway, as we stood at the front of the stage, the trick is that behind us, the stage would open up, and from the ground floor, below the stage, up would come a full-length piano, baby grand. We would step back, and there it would be, and we'd go into the encore using a grand piano playing some rock and roll piece, I think, by Tchaikovsky from the Nutcracker Suite, Nut Rocker. Well, we were at the front of the stage. We've done this many times. The stage opens up. This particular night in Illinois, Chicago area, little town actually, not far from Chicago. We were at the front of the stage opened up, I'd forgotten, I stepped back, and I fell right into the hole, and I slid down the piano lid, this is a grand piano, because the part of the lid was nearly at stage level, I slid down the lid, a guy caught me. On the way down, I caught my rib. I caught my 11th rib, which is the floating rib.
Yeah.
It was a bit sore, I didn't think much of it. By the time I'd been caught, got back on my feet, everybody wondered where I was, and everyone thought it was part of the act, you know, part of the set. By the time I climbed the stairs to get back on the stage, I'd got a bruise on the side of my stomach, hit my waist here, the size of a rugby ball. Anyway, I played, and we did it, and that was it, and I finished, and I was okay taking the bow when we walked off. By the time I got back to the dressing room, I could hardly walk. One side of my body got very, very stiff, you know, it was painful. Anyway, they took me to the hospital, and they said, oh, yeah, it's clean, it's a clean break, it's this. I'm saying, what's a clean break? He said, it's the 11th rib, the floating rib. Oh, I said, okay, then, could you strap us up and say, I want to go backstage. He said, no, you're in. I said, what do you mean I'm in? He said, you're staying in overnight. He said, because the problem is it could have punctured your spleen, and we'll need to check you every hour to see if there's any internal bleeding. Oh, I said, you've got to be joking. Anyway, stayed in hospital that night. Every hour, 15 minutes, this huge black nurse would come waddling into the room and grab my arm, take my blood pressure, ask me how I was, and you know, there was only water, no tea, no coffee, no nothing. And the following morning, the band had already gone on to the next gig, and I had to rent a small single-engine plane, which the promoter rented for me. I couldn't fly myself, obviously, somebody had to fly it for me. And they strapped me up. I had this huge belt around me. They gave me these painkillers and things, and I couldn't take them because they're making me too drowsy. I thought, I'll just go through the pain. Anyway, that night, and the next gig, when I played, every time I kind of hit the cymbal, I played the bass drum as well, the pain was just excruciating. And it lasted for about 3 days. So I stayed off the painkillers, because I was probably taking enough other things anyway at the time. And that was it. But the reason why it's a funny story is because the town was called Normal. And that was not very normal.
Very, very good. If you had a time machine, which era would you go back to?
I would say I wouldn't change. The era that I was born in, I think, was the best. Mm-hmm. Not because of anything to do with the the drummers that were coming up at that time, because there's so many great drummers from the past. I just think you had a period and an era in the 60s when the music business was opening up globally to the point where record companies weren't going on strike like they did in the 40s. People could make records and get paid for them. There was technology that was at the beginning of MTV in the 80s. So for me, the period of time that I was born in is the best time, because I think I had everything right up to today, where if I'd been born, let's say 20 years earlier, there wasn't the technology, there wasn't the know-how, and there were internal problems with RCA and this and that, these big companies at the time who basically ruled the roost. And you know, there was a time when nobody was making any records. There was a time when stuff didn't happen, and you know, we had to go and play for the troops and do all this, which is nothing wrong with that. But when I came onto the scene, as it were, I was born in 1950, by the time I was 11, 12, the music business globally was just taking off. And we had all these great players to nick things from and check up on, but we had a much more fluid and much more intelligent and much better industry to work within. That's the story. And I would have wanted to have played the music I played anyway, even though I love big band music and I love all of those things, and I love jazz. I would have wanted to play what I play, because basically I'm a rock drummer. That's what I wanted to be. End of story. So I couldn't change it.
Fantastic. One last question. You can invite 4 guests, dead or alive,
Yeah.
to a dinner party. Who would they be?
I think I'd have Elvis Presley. I'd have Miles Davis, Einstein, and Churchill.
Fantastic. Good mix. Well, Carl Palmer, thank you
you
so much.
More than welcome.
Thank you. And we'll see you next time.
See you later.